Beyond the Wrench with Jay Goninen from Find a Wrench.
Welcome to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and today I'm excited to welcome Rick Perrin. Rick is, I'm really excited for this conversation because it's something that I've tried to get a grasp of for quite some time now. And we're talking about business valuations and shop valuations and really kind of diving into some of the business aspect. And I think the cool part about this conversation is it's not just that a shop owner needs to know this, but there's probably a lot of technicians out there that might be looking at either taking over a business or trying to go out on their own. And I think this is a lot of really, really good information for all of you. So welcome to the show, Rick. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Jay.
Good. So why don't you start by giving us a little background on who you are and what you do?
Sure. Again, my name is Rick Perrin. I am a partner with a firm called B2B CFO. So we are chief financial officers. We provide financial strategy, financial consulting, operations consulting to businesses, primarily to help businesses to increase profitability, increase their value for this exact same thing, help companies exit their businesses profitably and successfully. There's a lot to that. I started out with a degree in accounting and an MBA in finance many years ago. Have been worked my way up through the accounting world, was the chief financial officer of two mid-sized manufacturing companies. And then for the last 15 years, I've been a partner of B2B CFO, working with over 80 different companies, helping them to improve financial management and profitability.
Wow, that is awesome. This is the stuff I'm excited about diving into because, as I mentioned in the intro, it really is something that I don't have a good idea of, or I've got kind of an idea, but not great. So I think there's a lot of people out there like me that like to dive into this stuff. So when we're talking in regard to a shop, right? I don't know if it's the same for a dealership as it is an independent repair shop, and we'll dive into that kind of stuff. But maybe talk about what somebody should be looking at as they're going into, maybe we're going to start with from the perspective of somebody that owns a shop right now, or
Sure.
Really kind of manages that shop and is looking at the future. What are important things to them that they need to be looking at where maybe they don't do a good job of it right now?
Sure. Well, it all relates back to, a lot of it does relate back to the financials and all of the things that you do and how that relates to your earnings. Obviously, there's a lot of soft things in your business, but when it comes to selling your business, I assume most people want to try to get as much as they can out of it. You're kind of silly not to. Doesn't mean that you have to sell it to the top dollar, to the highest bidder, but you certainly, after all of your hard work, after the number of years, you want to get the most you can for it. And so things that you want to do is obviously increase your profitability. The profit in most businesses, the value is based on the amount of money that you make. And so things like improving revenue, having good revenue and profits, having good management and staff in place, having a good reputation, having good software, programs, keeping your equipment up to date and in good condition. Just when you walk in, just the looks of the place is certainly going to affect the value. If it's dirty, if there's stuff all over the floors, that kind of projects who you are and can affect the the value of the business. The amount of competition in the local area, the involvement of the owner. So there's lots and lots of things that affect what the value of that is, but a lot of those things kind of relate right back to the profitability.
So when you're looking at that, and one thing that you talked about there, you mentioned there, was the involvement of the owner. What is attractive to maybe an incoming buyer? Is it that because the way that I view it is that you want the business that is, I don't want to say self-sustaining, but really isn't maybe overly reliant on one person, because if that person leaves, then you're kind of stuck. Is that actually true, or is that just something that I'm dreaming up?
No, that's absolutely true. Very, very true. In most businesses, in business sales, one of the most pressing issues or one of the biggest obstacles with many businesses is that the owner is the business. And if that owner is not in the business really can't run very well. And so, in this, in the shops, in these kinds of businesses that are, normally a little smaller than some of the larger businesses that get sold, but it depends on, is the owner turning a wrench? Is the owner working on the cars and trucks? Or is the owner really just managing the business? And so I'm sure there's going to be, with all of the listeners, there's going to be a combination of both. But the owner wants to get, it would be of benefit that owner gets the business where he's not spending as much time with a wrench in his hand or her hand, and the shop kind of takes care of itself, and obviously the owner is very involved in managing that, but has all the processes and procedures and things in place where he can walk away, the new person can walk in. Obviously, that owner may stay around a while and help train or show some ropes to the new owner. But being able to, the worst thing that could possibly happen would be, if that owner needs to be there every day
Right.
for that shop to run.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of, especially the independent shops that we deal with, are maybe struggle with, right? And I think it goes back to that working on the business as much as working in the business, right? And really trying to work on everything that drives exactly what you're talking about, that other stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and that's. Oh, go ahead, Rick.
There's obviously a lot to running a business other than the actual product that's put out. There's all of the the accounting and the marketing and the insurance and advertising and website and all of those kinds of things. And so normally at a smaller shop, it will be the owner who probably knows most of those things, and those are the things that they'll have to communicate and transfer to the new owner. But as long as that shop is running and running well, has good employees that have been there, without a lot of turnover, that would certainly be a big red flag or a positive if the turnover was low, or even having a lead mechanic out there that kind of had been around a while and knows some of the customers and that would certainly be helpful. A lot of this, Jay, is just common sense, right?
Sure.
You don't need to be an accountant or a CPA or anything like that to understand. If you walk into a business, do they have good customer service? Is it clean? Do they seem to know what they're doing? Are they greeting people, and do they have the right COVID processes in there? It's just, do they have their software? Do they when you go to check out, is it easy, or the invoices are wrong? It's just simple business.
So I kind of want to almost like reverse engineer this, right? Where when I talk about that, I want to start with the valuation side of it in general, right? And I think that's something where a lot of our community might not have a firm understanding of valuation. And I think sometimes it's kind of this mysterious thing where we're going to leave that to the CPA, right? Or we're going to leave that to the accountant. So talk to us a little bit about valuation and how you even come up with maybe a price, or if you're that owner that's 5 to 10 years out, what you should be aiming for to try and build your business so that you do get the maximum out of it.
Absolutely.
Walk me through the valuation side.
I will do that. And so valuation of businesses can really vary based on the type of business, the size of the business, the industry you're in, the competition, et cetera. And even within the same industry, there can certainly be variations. So I did some research and got some research papers on this, just so I was up on the particular industry, because again, it does vary on multiples and things. So here's what I found. And what I found is a couple different sources. I talked to some brokers, I got some reports, and I found pretty much the same thing from all of them, which is a good thing. So here's a few rules of thumb. So we're talking about selling price. So selling price normally equals about 30 to 40. There's a number of different ways to look at it, but one of them, the first one, is annual net sales. So sales price could be 30 to 40% of net annual sales. And then to that number, so if you had $1 million, that would be 300, let's say 300 to 400,000. And then to that, you add the inventory. Okay, so the inventory, if you got $100,000 of inventory, they would get that on top of that. And then, of course, the land and the building would be in addition to that as well. Not the equipment. The equipment is part of the building. That's what's creating the annual sales. So all of your lifts and your computers and things would be included in that 30 to 40% of net annual sales. You would simply add inventory and then the value of the building and the real estate. So that's one way of looking at it. A second way to look at it is what we call a multiple of SDE, which is seller's discretionary earnings. So seller's discretionary earnings is really the total compensation of the owner. So it equals the operating profit of the business, plus we add back depreciation, which is a charge that's made against the assets of the business to as part of the profit and loss. And then we add back interest and taxes, and we add in, so SDE is really the total owner compensation. So think about it as we take the net profit, and then we take his salary, and then we add his benefits and perks. So if they own a company automobile, or they've charged some personal travel or meals and entertainment, and the owner's health insurance, we add all that together, and that's what we call SDE. It's kind of their discretionary earnings, or the amount they're taking out of the business. Okay, so as with most cases, a larger shop gets a little bit higher valuation. So if we have a shop that has SDE of about $150,000 or more, then often it's about a 3 times SDE. So if you have $150,000 of seller's discretionary earnings, then that business could be worth about $450,000. If the SDE is under 150,000, that means it's just kind of a smaller shop, and that would often be anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 times the SDE. Okay.
Okay.
So that's a second way of looking at it. A third way of looking at it is it's similar. It's called EBITDA. Everybody who reads the newspaper and selling businesses often hear about EBITDA. It stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's kind of a cash flow number. It's similar to SDE, but 3 to 3.5 times EBITDA would be a normal range for the sale of a business. And again, a smaller one might be a little on the lower end, and a larger business on the higher end. Sometimes you hear about businesses selling for 5 and 6 and 10, even 10 times EBITDA. Those are the ones that are much higher are the the sexier tech businesses that are growing fast. They're going to become multi-million or billion-dollar businesses, but unfortunately, the auto shops, it's really more of a 3 to 3.5 times. So that's kind of a base, Jay.
Yeah.
And then I've got a number of other things I can mention that kind of relate back into that as well.
Before you go into the other stuff, one thing that I always am confused on is how do you pick which model to value the business on, right? Like I'm guessing if you're a seller, you're probably going to want to go the route that values it the most, and if you're a buyer, you're probably going to want to use the model that values it the least.
Sure.
How similar does the math come out in terms of, say, like these 3 different models and how a business is valued? Do they kind of get to the same ballpark of what a business is valued at the end of the day, or is there kind of differences between those models that would be beneficial to either the seller or the buyer?
I think, Jay, these 3 methods should come fairly close. Obviously, there's going to be differences. When you get a certified appraiser in the appraisal industry, especially for IRS appraisals that relate back to taxes and things like that, the appraisers are required to use a number of different methods. And so they use a cash flow method and an asset sale method and a present value method and, similar sales. They have to look at similar sales. And what they do is they put those all together and then they kind of weight them, to kind of come up with an average, which kind of seems a little odd, but that's kind of what they do. But it's really, it's an art more than a science. So you will get certainly some different numbers there, and then it just becomes a negotiation as to, what that owner wants or needs to get out of the business and is willing to sell it for, and what a willing buyer, the value of a business is what a willing buyer
Yeah, right.
you can find will pay. So, there's cases where you'll have a willing buyer to pay much more.
So what does it come down to in negotiation then? If you're sitting in there and you've done the math, or you've got an appraiser that appraises a business at a certain level, where are the opportunities for negotiation? I would take it as like, okay, this is what the appraiser said. I'm probably going to respect that opinion. Where are opportunities to negotiate there?
Sure. Well, the appraisal is simply somebody taking numbers and looking at them and looking at what the industry. So the appraisal should come pretty close to a reasonable ballpark. But then there certainly can go up or down from there. And again, it's just a negotiation. One thing you've got to think about is most of these owners are going to go look for a bank loan. They're not going to come up with $300,000 to $400,000 or $500,000 of cash. And so one of the things is the banks will only lend a certain percentage of the value of that business. Let's say they'll lend 70%. Well, they will most likely look to a certified appraisal. And so you've got to kind of start with that. So let's say you have it appraised at $500,000, but but you're asking you're asking, you say, no, that's not right. I'm going to ask 600,000. Well, if the owner, if the buyer has to go get a loan, he may only be able to get 70% of 500,000 or 350. And so he would have to come up with the other 100,000 because the bank's just not going to lend on that, that 80% of that extra 100 grand. So that's certainly one thing to think about. And then, there's all of these other types of things that that come into play that I was going to bring up. It's the buyer, if they've got additional ideas or they've got ways to bring synergies into it. Maybe they already own another shop down the street or across town, and so they have synergies in their purchasing power and to be able to move techs around and things, that could give that individual buyer reason even to pay a little more because he's going to get those synergies. So maybe the buyer knows that, or the seller knows that and says, oh, I know this guy, this is really going to be valuable to this guy. I'm going to raise the price a little bit.
Yeah.
So it just all becomes then a negotiation as to what the buyer and seller agree on.
This is really cool stuff. And
Sure.
Where did the multiple thing come into play? I know this has been around for forever, but like when I say that, why is a multiple or having something like that important? Like, is it, I'm guessing this wasn't dreamt up out of nowhere. There's a reason for it.
Jay, it's really all based on, simple financial, basics of kind of return on investment, right? So as you look at a business and you say, well, what should I pay for it? A normal business, so you can put your money in the stock market and maybe you'll get 5 to 8% on average a year. It might go down one year, it might go up 20% one year, right? You can put it, and there's some risk to that. You can put it in government bonds and make about 1% right now, sometimes a little bit higher. But when you invest in a business, there's risk involved, right? And so really what they do is they look at the value. You start out with, what is the value of those assets if I just sold those assets off? So that's kind of a minimum value that you would ever have, right? So that you're really not going to go any lower than what you could sell those assets off for. And then beyond that then, so if it can create X amount of profit or SDE, seller's discretionary income or earnings, it can create $150,000. That equates to kind of a return that you would get on your money, right? And so in the world of buying businesses, especially as we look at larger businesses, but it's the same for small, it's like what is the return on investing my money in a similar asset or a similar business? And then you have to look at what is the risk. Okay, maybe is the risk very high of these kinds of shops. If you run the shop right, it's probably not a real risky business unless you're not a good operator. But some businesses are riskier, and the higher risk, the higher return, rate of return that you need to get on that business. And so it all kind of comes back to if I pay too high a price, okay, then I've got to borrow more money, and then I have to pay more interest, and then I'm not going to get that return because I paid too much, right? Or my return on the assets or return on my investment, it is going to be lower. So if I want a 10% return on my investment, but I pay too much, I'm only going to get a 9%. So there's kind of an equilibrium, a mathematical equilibrium to get, and so the market out there kind of figures out, what is the right kind of return on this kind of a business with this amount of risk, and so 3 3 to 4, 2 to 3 times SDE kind of get you that equilibrium.
That is really helpful. It's probably something you deal with all the time and you don't even think about it, but it is, it's something where I think, I'd read about valuations and read books about it in the past, but really the understanding of why a value or why a multiple is important is you nailed that. That was really good. So talking through, our customer base and really probably the listener base is a mixture of dealerships and independents. Do you have kind of an idea if it is similar between the two, or because the dealership has maybe a parts aspect and a sales aspect, and a lot of dealerships in general are very sales driven, is there a difference in multiple between the two?
When you say dealerships, do you simply mean an operation that has multiple sites?
So when I say that, just a general new car dealership, or like
a new car, okay.
Yeah, and I don't mean to I know that could be a whole discussion on its own, so don't don't take that one too crazy. But is that something that you would see a different multiple for, maybe?
Well, sure. If you're talking about a car dealership that also, does, Zimbrick, or, even a small one that does that, there's certainly a whole different picture in that. And I didn't really research that too much, but now you have a much different picture, because you really have 3 different aspects of that. Number one, you have the sale of the assets. So you've got the car sales. Then you have the parts sales, which a shop does as well, but there would be even more in a dealership as a percentage. And then you have the service side, right?
Sure.
And so you have really a much different situation, because each one of those drives a lot of it with valuation. I'm guessing off the top of my head that a dealership would certainly be a higher valuation.
Sure.
I've done some work for some different dealers, not car dealers, but I've done some work for ag dealers and whatever. And the whole thing with the ag dealers is there's a number of different things that we look at to try to I can get you this information later. I'm trying to think of some of the terms, but we want to look at our parts business and our service business, and it has to bring in X amount of annual money as a percent of the total, because we all know that we're not going to make a ton of money on the cars themselves. They get discounted, but hopefully you sell more cars and you make some profit on that. But that percentage is small, or a smaller percentage of the parts and the service business. So there's a whole piece to that of running a dealership, and certainly the valuation is going to be different.
Well, and when I was on the dealership side, and it's funny that you say that, because this was specific. I worked for Bobcat Company, so construction equipment, and worked in ag dealerships as well, and one of the big things that we pushed was absorption rate. And I know a lot of the car dealerships do that as well, where you're wanting to pay, as much or all of the bills. 100% absorption was great, where you're paying for all of the bills of the dealership with the service and parts. And sometimes it varied on whether they'd put a rental department in there or something like that. But, being able to pay the bills with that core foundation of your business, and then having the sales be kind of the icing on the cake, was a really good approach, and where we saw really successful dealerships kind of fully go in there.
And absorption was the word I was looking for. I just was lost in my head somewhere.
Oh, that's all right.
That's exactly what the word I was looking for, is the absorption, which is really the part sales and the service profit.
Yes, that's perfect. So, speaking more to an independent shop right now, do you, if I'm an owner and I want to start looking at the valuation of my business and starting to see and understand what this business is worth. Who's the first call I make? What do I do?
Well, I would say a lot of the good size accounting firms, certainly a couple of different things. The accounting firms can be a good source. Many times they have valuation people at the accounting firm. There are other larger valuation companies, but they're often dealing primarily with, a little bit larger companies. The other thing that I would do is talk to a good business broker. Most of these, if you're going to go sell it on the market, you don't have an insider. Again, a lot of these sell to insiders or family or whatever. But talk to a good business broker. There's a number of them around. You want to research and find, but they'll have industry data. They may have sold one. They may be selling one right now, and they'll be able to give you a lot of this detail. And they make all of their money on selling you for a higher price because they get a percentage. And so they're going to do all they can to give you some ideas as well as to how to increase the value of that business. So I think that your accountant, talking to a business broker, possibly another appraisal firm, and even reading on the internet, before this meeting, I just got on the internet and I found a ton of articles. I mean, what we always say is prepare for your exit. Don't just wake up one day and say, oh, geez, I don't want to go through another COVID or another 2008. I'm tired. I just want to sell. You really need to prepare for your exit to make it what we call a successful exit. And a successful exit is not just, the price that you get, but it's being able to actually sell the business versus not sell it at all. Yeah. It's be able to sell it in a reasonable time period. It's be able to, do I want to stay in the business and sell it and keep working for a while? Or do I want to, I just want to get out and go buy a boat and be on the water? So there's a lot of things really, if you spend a minimum of a year getting ready for that sale, you can start saying, well, how do I increase my profits a little bit? How do I get my books a little bit better? We were going to talk about your books and how important it is to have good records. Are my books in order? Can I clean up the shop and paint it a little bit? Can I get some more, I've been thinking about going down and talking to that company down the street that just, it seems like they've got a fleet of cars. Why, maybe this is the time to go talk to them and say, why aren't you repairing at my place? Because if we were to get the fleet for this, they got 20 cars there. That's what we call recurring revenue, because we know that here's a business that's going to continue sending us cars month after month after month. And so recurring revenue in any business increases the valuation because it's kind of a known ongoing source of revenue versus hoping that somebody drives in, to get their car fixed. Can I talk to some insurance companies, on doing some of their repairs? Oh, now if I can do some of those things, all of a sudden, in the next 2 years, I might be able to increase that multiple from 2.5 to 3.5. I may increase the revenue from 800,000 to $1.2 million. And if you do the math, every $50,000 just multiplies many, many times. And so why would you not? These are things that, an aggressive owner should be doing all of the time. But if you've gotten kind of tired or just not spending as much time in the last couple of years, why wouldn't you do that, and work your butt off, for the another year or two and get some of these things in place before you sell.
That is fascinating. Now, when you talk recurring, and this is where I've learned a little bit from, Mark, my business partner, and he's corrected me on this a few times. And I think it took a little bit to drill into my head of like what qualified as recurring, right? Or what a true recurring system is. When you're in that scenario where you're going to go talk to that fleet, how do you prove that, right? Is it through a contract? Is it through just you see the revenue on the P&L every month and that's how you judge it? How do you judge what true recurring is if you're looking at a business?
Yeah, well, certainly a contract certainly is going to be better, but I'm guessing there's not many of these businesses, as being a CFO of a company, I could probably tell you there's not a lot that are going to sign a contract with a place like, auto repair place. But if you can, that would be more valuable. If you had a 3-year contract, then it's like, ooh, we've got that locked in for 3 years. So the more of that, the better. So I think just being able to have good books and records and be able to show, hey, you can see every single month last year, we got in, on average 4 cars from these people or these kinds of things. We put a new engine in, we've done all of their oil changes. And so just having good books and records is really important.
So let's talk about that a little bit more in depth. When we talk about good books and good records, what are we talking about?
Sure. So it really having accurate and timely financials, meaning accounting, books, and records, is really important for every business. And it's kind of interesting. It's something a lot of people don't understand. Accounting is just one of those things that if you're not an accountant, haven't had accounting programs or education, it's kind of something a lot of people just kind of stay away from, and really they need to understand. I spend most of my time helping businesses to understand what their numbers are. I help them with accounting, but what I do is I help them get the accurate and timely financials in a way that it gives them numbers to help understand their business. So having accurate and timely financials is not just in selling your business. It's to have good records to tell you what's going on in the business. Where am I making money? Where am I not making money? Where do I make the most money? Who are my best customers? How much money do I make from that fleet down there? Is it 10% of my revenues? Is it 15? So understanding and having accurate books is just good business to understand where and how you make money and to make better decisions with it. So that's where we start. From there, though, as we talked on valuation, everything about selling your business or the value of your business kind of relates to your financials and how profitable you are. So when you sell a business and you say, okay, it's going to be 3 times SDE, and we agree on that. Well, the buyers are going to come in and they want to look at the books and confirm that that's the SDE, or talk to your accountants. And so, if your books aren't right and they get in there, it's like, wait a minute, their books are awful. They use QuickBooks, but it seems like they don't record things very well. It just looks awful. I don't have much confidence that these things are accurate. And so, have they been charging all kinds of personal stuff in here, or what is it? And so if a buyer, through what's called due diligence, you've heard the word due diligence, is when a buyer comes in and they want to confirm, hey, oh, they do have a fleet down the street, or how many do they do? Is their annual revenue really $1 million? If when they come in to do that due diligence, if they find issues or it looks kind of fishy, what are they going to do? They're going to say, oh, I don't know, that's a little risky. I'm not sure about these guys. And so that's going to either make them walk away, or else it's going to absolutely lower the price or the multiple. And so having a good understanding of that, having good books and records makes a lot of difference, just running your business, and then especially when you're going to sell it. And even having your accountant kind of certify those books, or spend a little bit of time with them, can help a potential buyer. There's one other thing here I think that's really important to small businesses, and this relates probably not as much to, to auto shop owners as it does to bars and others, but I think it's an important thing to say. Sometimes businesses, we're all people. It's like, oh, I get some cash in my business. It'd be easy not to report that, right? And I'm not saying that anybody or any of these listeners would ever do that, but I want to show you how that could backfire on you. Okay, so it might be easy to take some cash out of that business without reporting it and say revenue. So let's say on average you've got $1 million business or a $500,000 business, and you take $10,000 out as cash, and really you don't report it on your books, right? So what does that do? You get the cash, you don't record. You don't record it from the IRS, so you could get in trouble, but maybe you'll never get caught. But you might have paid on that $10,000. You might have paid $20,000 or $2,000 of taxes on that, right? So $2,000 to $3,000 at the most. And so by taking that out, you've saved yourself $2,000 or $3,000 of taxes. Well, now we come to sell the business. Now the earnings are now $10,000 lower than they would be before, right? Because you took 10,000 out, so that goes right to the bottom line. So guess what you just did? We just said SDE or EBITDA is now $10,000 lower. So now you've just lost 3 to 3.5 times that, $30,000 to $35,000 of sale price because you wanted to save $2,000 in taxes.
Wow.
That makes sense?
It does. And I've never heard it been phrased that way. That is really good stuff.
Sure. It's just an interesting part of accounting. You kind of save yourself 2,000, but now if you've done that for the last 20 years, you might have saved a lot more, than you would at a minimum. And everybody should report all of their income, but if you have been doing that and you want to sell your business in the next couple of years, stop doing it.
Yeah. Oh, no kidding. No kidding. My goodness, that's great stuff. So what if
that's kind of the books and records piece that we needed to talk about.
Well, what if you're on the other side of that, right? Where you are looking at selling your business, but historically you haven't been good at keeping good books.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do to change? And what is it? Hiring somebody? Is it what do you do to really start that process and really get it turned in the right direction?
Yeah, it's really not too hard. What I would do is I would go to one of the local CPA firms or bookkeeping firms. A number of places do. Some small businesses are large enough where they get their own bookkeeper and track it all, and then I still often have the CPA take a look at it, or the accounting firm. There are bookkeeping and accounting firms that'll actually do the books for you, and you send them all the records and they put them all together. But in any case, most of the CPA firms around or accounting firms can send somebody in and help you set up your QuickBooks, or your, I'm guessing a number you may have, these shops might have systems that interface with QuickBooks or their own little accounting systems that are part of the dealers, the dealer system. So it's really not that difficult to get set up. There's certainly some money involved, but it's money well spent.
Sure.
Because again, understanding your financials and where your cash flow is, other than just looking at your checkbook balance is just really important.
Yeah, and that's I think one thing, and finish off, or like I'll finish this statement with kind of just a something that I see, which is when and more so in the independent side, when it maybe a tech starts a shop, or somebody it goes in that doesn't have a typical business background. I think what they're doing as much as anything is just trying to fight to pay the bills, right? And almost to the point to where they see that if they make any money, like they almost feel bad about it. Like, I don't know if I'm saying that the right way, but I don't know if you've seen that in your experience, where you have to almost, like, the behaviors of an owner, you have to say, you know what, it is in your best interest, and it's in the best interest of the business that you do make money, and you need to do that. And it's almost, to me, a change in mindset.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of difference. We should talk in a bit about, a tech wanting to become an owner, because there's a lot of things in being an owner that's different than turning a wrench, and being a good technician. But yeah, I fully agree with you there.
Well, why don't we talk about that? Where, if I'm a technician, if I'm coming from the shoes of a technician, how, I know I've talked to a lot of techs that want that next step. They want to maybe start their own shop or buy out an existing shop. What are some good things to know for that technician that might be looking?
Sure. It's really everything we've talked about before is important. Really understanding the business well from the technician side is good, because I would think to own one of these shops, if you didn't understand that how the shop ran, then it'd be tough to be a good owner. So I think being a technician first is a great way to then become an owner. But then you need to ask a number of questions. First of all, do I really understand what it means to be an owner? I'm now going to have to hire people, supervise them, train them, discipline them. Do I have the temperament for that? Is that really where I want, do I want to start spending time doing that? I mean, I love fixing cars, but now I'm going to spend most of my time, doing a lot of paperwork, dealing with, I've got to keep up with the requirements for human resources, all of the state rules and regulations. Oh, these new COVID regulations are in. I could get in trouble if I don't have these policies and procedures written. So I've got to spend 10 hours putting these procedures together. Am I following, I've got to get workers' comp insurance, and I've got to deal with the insurance people, and I've got to do my accountants, and I've got to keep the books. And, so there's a lot of things, especially on the personnel. Oh my God, another person just quit. Where am I going to, so you're dealing with all of those kinds of things. And so the first question is that something that I want to do? Do you have a tolerance for risk? If the business doesn't do well, can I afford to lose some money? Do you have 20 to 30% cash down payment to buy this, because the bank isn't going to loan you 100% of that value? Or on the other side, if you a better way is, can you work with the current owner, or can you find a shop where the owner wants to sell in a few years and learn from him or her? That would be a great way to do it. If your current business is, not going to be selling, maybe you can go find one of these that we're talking about, one of these owners that's looking at selling, and learn from them. But it would be good to learn about insurance and bookkeeping and things, learn about all of the aspects of managing and running the business before you were just, said, oh, I'm a tech, I'm going to go, yep, my uncle lent my rich uncle lent me $300,000. I'm going to start tomorrow. Well, it would be good to understand some of those other things and learn from them, learn from an owner first. So
Yeah.
anyway, being an owner is much different than being a technician. So some of those things would certainly come into play.
Well, and I think I've learned that, it's one thing to say that you're good at something or that you like doing something, but it's a big dose of reality for a lot of technicians when they get into an office, and maybe not even just from an ownership aspect, but even from a point of like they go into manage, and your priorities change. The job is just different, and you have to look at yourself in the mirror and know that, hey, when those downtimes come, do I want this bad enough to keep it going? And it's from my standpoint, from a business owner standpoint, is you're going to have those experiences where you got to fight like hell to get through them. And it's, I don't think anybody could have envisioned COVID being what it is today. But there's, it's having a huge impact on a lot of businesses out there, and you have to have the fortitude to be able to push through that stuff. And that's maybe something where when you're looking at buying a business that can get over, you can look past it really easily because you see the kind of the glamour of owning a business, but there's some really tough parts of owning a business that I think techs need to understand.
Absolutely.
All right. So what else, is there anything we haven't touched on here, Rick, that you feel like is important to the conversation, or that might have some parting good words for our audience here?
I'll just go over some notes I have here a little bit. As far as valuation, we've got the money pieces, but let's remember, having good management and staff in place and low turnover, things like the number of service bays, your reputation, your equipment in a condition, your location, those are all important. As far as, how long does it take to go through the sale of a business? Remember, it can take quite a while, and there's a lot to it. Sometimes up to a year, sometimes more. So again, you want to prepare, but you have to find the right buyer. You have to negotiate the sale. You might have to get environmental reviews for the land. You've got to get bank loans. Bank loans can get turned down. You've got to get appraisals. They have to come in to do due diligence. It happens very often. Somebody comes in, does the due diligence, and it takes 2 months to get that done, and then they say, I'm not interested. And you think you've wasted 2 months. Or they go to get the business loan, and that drags on, and they're at their third bank, and then nobody will lend them money. So now I got to start again, go find somebody. So all of these things can take time. Now you might find somebody that walks in the door and they do it in 2 months. And so, but it always takes some time to do that. On the selling side as a shop owner, we always want to talk a little bit about, where do I start when thinking about transitioning the business? How much money do I need to retire? If I sell this business and I get the appraisal or the estimate from the broker or the appraiser company, is that enough money for me to live on, or am I going to have to keep working and get another job? Do I want to keep working? Do I want to sell this to the highest bidder as soon as possible? Or do I want to find an employee and train that person to keep my legacy going and work over the next couple of years to transition this to an employee? But I also have to remember what happens if I work with that employee for a year and he decides to move with his wife to California. I've just lost a year, and now I got to start over again or change my plan. So thinking about that a little bit. What am I going to do afterwards? Do I like to play golf, or what am I going to do? So just some of the things that the owner, as an owner, has to think about their future before they own, I think is important as well. I found a checklist for building a world-class, there's an article on the internet called Checklist for Building a World-Class Shop. Again, simple Google about selling your business, but I thought it was good. It was by an individual, I think his name was Cooper. But it said, here's some things that they said made it valuable. Having the right look, equipment that's, good equipment that's in good shape. What services do I offer, the type of services, systems and processes. One of the things that you want to make sure is, do you have good systems and processes that are repeatable? Is every technician kind of doing his own thing, or do you have some standards in there and standards on paperwork? How about my parts? Do I carry a lot of parts? Do I use OEM parts or other parts? And what do I do there? My pricing, how does that relate to the competitors? My integrity, having the right people and the right training. Employee safety, that's a big thing. Community involvement and environmental consciousness, that can bring you more business and who are you in the community. And then a record of customer satisfaction certainly is, so that was Cooper's. But other than that, I think we've pretty well covered it.
This is great stuff. I think I could just talk to you forever on this stuff, because these are things that I've studied a little bit myself, but just scratching the surface on this stuff, because it is, I mean, talking to somebody like you and being able to kind of pick your brain about it is just awesome. This was a lot of fun, and I appreciate you being on the podcast.
Absolutely. No, it's fun. I appreciate doing it. Happy to answer questions as they come along. And it's fun. It's really not rocket science at all. A lot of this information is on the internet. I encourage you, if you're going to be looking at buying or selling, just to get on and Google buying a business, selling a business, and also put in there, Google, buying or selling an auto repair shop, because there's a lot of articles out there that are very specific to this and will give you good ideas.
So where do people find you at, Rick? How would somebody get in touch with you?
I will give you my email address is rperrin, R-P as in Paul, E-R-R-I-N, at B, the letter B, the number 2, the letter B, CFO.com. So it's rperrin at B2BCFO.com. I'll give you my phone number, 608-576-3773. And then if you want to go to my website, you go to b2bcfo.com/Rick-Perrin, and you'll find me in Madison, Wisconsin.
All right, that sounds great. Thanks again, Rick, for joining us on the podcast. For those of you that haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to Beyond the Wrench. We're on YouTube. We're also on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you find your podcasts at. Please go out and subscribe. We'd love to have you as a listener and get to listen to us kind of talk like we did with Rick today and hear some really, really cool insights from some smart people. So thanks again, Rick, and have a good day.
You as well. Thanks.